Well, welcome to Six Tackles with Gus. Great to be back for another week as we look at round one, part two. Six Tackles is brought to you by Tab. We're on. Wonder how the post-Vegas come down is working for everyone who ventured over into the United States and now back on Australian shores for what I'm sure is going to be 6 excellent games to come over the next few days. You'll catch the best of them on 9. Gus, welcome home.
Matthew Thompson, how you doing?
I'm fine. More importantly, how are you?
Excellent. Couple of weeks away, big week in Vegas.
Yes.
And survived it all.
Jet lag?
No, none at all. No, we had the night flight, so I slept on the plane both ways, which was good. But, yeah, incredible experience, Las Vegas. There's no getting around that. I think if you are a rugby league fan, or if you are just a sporting fan, then it's something for your bucket list.
Right, we'll go. Tell us all about it. What was your favourite bit?
Well, it all was. I mean, you can go to Vegas without rugby league being on and have a good time.
Yes, we know that.
There's plenty of attractions in Vegas. And I didn't have a drink and I didn't gamble. You know, for those that like that, there's plenty of that for you over there. But
You didn't have a dinner or anything?
I had dinners and all that sort of thing.
Right.
Yeah, all that sort of thing, yeah. It's a different place, Vegas, but it's well worth seeing. It's very different to casinos you might have seen here in Australia or locally. It's absolutely brilliant. And but from the football perspective, right from the day we got there, there was a significant football presence on the streets of Las Vegas, which they say was more than double the presence that they'd felt the previous year. A lot of jerseys walking up and down the streets. A lot of people had travelled to be there. Some were expats living in America, but a lot had travelled from New Zealand and Australia and other parts of the world to come and be there. Of course, we had the 2 English teams from Wigan and Warrington, and they sent big supporter groups as well. Yeah, they had either sides of the ground. They were brilliant during their game earlier. The stadium wasn't full for their first game, but they certainly made the atmosphere in their game.
And the stadiums, obviously, I called it back here. We had you and a few others over there for 9. Well, the stadium itself was a football venue.
It's well worth the visit just to go and see the stadium. The stadium is,
Wow.
It's next level. I've never been anything like it. Absolutely incredible.
You've never been at anything like it? That's a huge one.
Never seen anything like it. Never seen anything like it. Just to go for the experience of the stadium is incredible.
Wow.
Yeah, it's how well organised. I mean, when I decided to go, they said, we'll get you tickets in the Chairman's Lounge. And I said, I don't want to go in the Chairman's Lounge. I want to watch the football. I don't want to be sitting in a lounge eating, and drinking. I just want to go out and watch the football. They said, no, it's different. You'll see it when you get there. Well, it's completely different. I mean, from the time you walk into the stadium, and it's very simple to get where we were going, you kind of go into an area. The Chairman's Lounge was about 4,000 or 5,000 seats. Like, it's not a viewing seats around the tunnel. So right around the tunnel where the players run out, there's all these sort of bays, and they're all seated in beautiful cushioned seating. But behind that, where you come into the ground, and then you go into a what would you call a suite? They call it a suite, the Twitch suite, and it's a giant lounge area, big screen TVs, bar, food areas, lounge areas, seating areas, and you think, oh well, this is the Chairman's Lounge. It's not. It's just where the public.
It's the reception area.
It's the reception area for the public part of the seating that's in that area. And then you go out to your seat, and your seats are beautiful. I mean, I could reach out and touch the players.
Really?
We were that close down the front. We had great seats. But then under there, where you see the players run out, they actually run out. It's a bit like Combank Stadium, where the players run out and there's sort of those 2 little bar areas either side.
Yeah, I noticed
Well, magnify that by 10. All right, there's this giant lounge that they walk through from the dressing rooms out onto the field, and that's the Chairman's Lounge. And it's a giant round or oval bar in the middle of the room, and a buffet-style food area with seating and all that type of thing. And it fits.
And you didn't want the tickets. If anyone wants Gus's tickets next year, just let him know.
You could fit 300 or 400 people in there at the one time. And, of course, in between games. So with the downtime, you just went down in underneath there, and you socialised, and there were people from all the clubs and everyone that were going across there, and all the media people were in there. And you virtually just walked out of there out onto the field, and you needed accreditation everywhere you went. But the stadium itself, the way it's set up, the roof is outstanding. The field is one of those that slides in and slides out. Yep. So they slide it out to grow the grass. it had 4 back-to-back games on it the other day, and it never turned a hair. Like, it was just the surface.
It looked fabulous.
Surface was brilliant. The acoustics. I mean, the music is so loud there, but if I'm sitting next to you, I can talk without having to yell.
Really?
The acoustics are just
That's impossible in Sydney ground.
incredible. The catering and the suites and the seating areas, and it kind of, you get a really good view, and then it sort of goes straight up. It's right up above you. The sound, the music, and I think a lot of it was done locally as well, and the ground announcers. It was just incredible to be a part of that sort of experience. It was kind of like an NRL game, but with that sort of American pizzazz, and it was really good. And there was never a dull moment during the whole time. It wasn't, it's only a few minutes. Like, you could actually walk for 30 minutes from the centre of Las Vegas or the strip area to get to the ground. Not easy transport-wise to get there and back after the game, but that's a small price to pay for actually being in that stadium and the way it was organised and the way they organised the crowd. Good crowd, 45,000 people.
Yeah.
4 games on the day. The last one was obviously the best of the 4, because we had the 2 best sides playing in the last game. But it was worthwhile, the experience. I went across there and looked at all the training venues, all the grounds that they trained on.
But tell me about the the Vegas Raiders.
Yes, went to the Vegas Raiders. That's an NFL franchise.
Yeah,
So they used to be the Oakland Raiders.
Yep.
The Oakland Raiders I went to many, many, many years ago. It was a rather humble-looking sort of dwelling, but this one's like a $2 billion centre of excellence. It's kind of like everything we've got over here, but, it's lavish. It's extravagant to the extreme. This particular one had 1.5 fields undercover. So they had a full field undercover right alongside their dressing rooms. You could virtually walk out of the gym and walk out of the dressing rooms to this indoor playing field, and then another half field on the other end where they could practice kicking while teams were practicing their field work on that sort of thing. Gymnasiums, fully catered kitchen and buffet areas, and everything that opens and shuts, everything you could think of that you would need to prepare a football team, to host sponsors, to look after corporates, to medical, their x-rays, everything that could open and shut was in this building. It was absolutely extraordinary. And they had 3 grass fields outside. That's the Las Vegas Raiders.
Now, did you sign a player? Who are you bringing back?
I'll get
all right.
I'll get to that.
Oh.
So then, and we also went to where the teams were training. There were 3 playing fields. Now, the training fields are only suburban soccer grounds. They're very well done. So there might be 3. There was 3 venues that I went to, and in each venue there might be 8 or 10 ovals. All right, but it's very, very well done. The grass surfaces weren't perfect. They were adequate. They weren't perfect, but I think they'll get better. They all looked very, very new.
Okay.
And you've got to remember, around Vegas around that time, it gets down to near 2 degrees at night, even though it's 24, 25 degrees during the day. So you get wild fluctuations in temperature at that time of year. So it's not growing season, and the frost sort of burns the grass a little bit. So it can be a little bit fluffy, but if you look around the ground enough, you can find the good patch of grass to look on. There were no posts there for them. But I went and watched all the teams sort of train from a distance. I didn't take interest in what they were doing, but just where they were training. And to all of them, I spoke to Ricky Stewart, I spoke to Craig Fitzgibbon, and the guys from the Warriors and the Panthers, and they said it was good. They were able to train there. All of them used the home of UFC worldwide is in Las Vegas, and they've got their own training facility, which is again out of this world. It's absolutely world class, magnificent, and that's where they went to do their weights, their wrestle, their recovery, everything that opens and shuts, meals. So they could cater for 4 clubs on a rotation basis. So they sort of had 3 training venues. They shared the 3 training venues, went somewhere different every day, and that depended on the timing that they wanted to go and do weights, recovery, gym work, wrestle work over in the UFC area. So they just rotated through, and of course that included the 2 English teams, Wigan and Warrington. Panthers 2 days before the game actually played against Warrington in a training session, which was very helpful to them, I'm sure. The girls' teams were training at the same venues, went and watched them train. So they did it really well. From what I understand, it was far better organised than the year before. The year before, the NRL sort of left it up to the clubs to decide or to organise training venues. Now, they've all handled it very differently. The 4 teams that went last year and the 4 that came this year. The Sharks went to LA for a few days. They went into training camp at USC. And they trained on an artificial surface for the first part of their preparation. Then they came across to Vegas. Raiders went straight to Vegas. Panthers went straight to Vegas. Warriors went straight to Vegas. The year before, I think 2 or 3 of the teams trained outside of Vegas before going to Vegas later in the week. But in Vegas, there's plenty for them to do. I think for teams that are wanting to go there, the challenge is keeping your team occupied the whole time while you're there. It's not like Australia. You haven't got your own television and what you like to watch. It's not like Australia, we can just walk into a coffee shop and grab a sandwich and something to eat. It's not like that in Vegas, and there's a lot of walking to get to where you need to go.
Anyone take their golf clubs?
No, well, a lot of the supporter bases did. Yeah, they played golf courses there, had golf days there, and there's indoor golf if you want to do that sort of thing. There's indoor everything if you want to do it. Great attractions, great show. I went to 3 great shows.
What'd you watch?
I went to Piano Man, which was sort of a tribute to Billy Joel and Elton John, which was outstanding. It was performed by a fellow who actually got the lead role in a Broadway musical about Billy Joel. He was tremendous. This is the thing. You go over there and you see artists you've never heard of who are absolutely world class. I went to Cirque du Soleil, which was like a giant, circus sort of thing, but it was done over water. It wasn't my go, but but it was great to see it. It's water.
Right.
It's on water. Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah. So it's on water, and I went to see Kevin Hart.
Did you?
Which was the highlight of the whole thing. The Kevin Hart show was absolutely outstanding.
He's very funny.
Absolutely outstanding. I thought I was going to pass out. Honestly, he was so funny. And he had 3 comedians on that were on before him just to warm the crowd up. He didn't come on for a couple of hours. They were very, very good, the 3 early comedians. But when he came on, just a different class of entertainer. He was absolutely brilliant. He never stopped for about an hour and a half. And
even in the movies he's like that. Like he just doesn't draw breath.
Full energy.
Yes.
Like just full-on energy. Full-on energy. One of the NRL blokes was telling me he went to the fitness centre the next day and Kevin Hart was on the treadmill alongside of him. And he said, "You're a really good bloke." He said, "Can I get my picture taken with you?" He said, "No, man, if you stop for a picture, everyone will want one." So he said, so he just shook his hand and he moved on. Yeah, but that was a great. The whole thing was terrific.
To think this was a pipe dream 5 years ago, it's all.
Well, I think that's the thing. It's seeing our game in that location, in that venue, on that stage. I know I was back here last year. I didn't go to Vegas, so I know what effect it had on us back here. So I can only assume it was very similar this year, that the opening rounds of the competition in Vegas was sold very well.
I think the build-up here and the general level of coverage was it was more intense this year.
Yeah, well,
you couldn't escape it.
Yeah, it was. I can't fault it in any way. It was magnificent, and it's well worth the effort to go there if you can. You can do Vegas. It can be very expensive, or you can do it as cheap as you like. I mean, there's something for everyone across there.
Well, I had a look at some of the. Gus's new segment. I'll talk about the prices shortly. But I don't think there's anything cheap about it from what I'm reading.
Well, it depends where you stay and depends where you go and how you want to be entertained. But you can do it as cheap as you like.
Yeah.
It's the same as Hawaii. I mean, you can do Hawaii very expensive, or you can do it very cheap and have a real budget holiday. I mean, there's something for everyone. But Vegas was tremendous, and there are many attractions. There are things that you can keep them active doing. Yeah, absolutely loved it. But glad to get on the plane and come home. There were some travel problems for everyone sort of getting home.
I heard there was a flight.
Yeah, flights were cancelled. There are still some people there that aren't coming home.
There's still people there?
Until today, yeah. Paul Gallen got put off his flight.
No way.
I'll tell you the story later.
Well,
he never got put off his flight. He was sitting at the bar alongside where they enter into the flight, and he was just going to be last onto the plane. He wanted to be last onto the plane. So the standby people got his spot. He and Dino Mezzatesta, the CEO from Cronulla Sharks, were just sitting there having a coffee or something, and
you're kidding!
They replaced him on the plane. You've got to get on your plane and get your seat straight away. So they had to jump in a car and drive from Vegas to LA to catch.
So Gal's home, is he?
He's home, yeah.
Because I texted him on Sunday asking how he was, because our friend Gal, he does a good job of Vegas. He said, "I want to come home."
Yeah. Yeah, that
was his response.
If you go hard, 3 or 4 days is plenty.
Oh, tell me about it.
Yeah.
Right, 2 questions. The Bulldogs are obviously keen to go. You've got no concerns? Like, you think it's a great experience? You'd be happy to send your team there?
Oh, absolutely. I think every club's fans now want to be a part of it. As I said after the first year, I think it'll be an annual pilgrimage for NRL people, like all the people that went from the clubs. Many of them took partners and families and all that sort of thing. It's a once in a lifetime experience, and those that went last year said it was so much better again this year, and I can only see that improving. The fan night where they close off the old part of the strip down there in Las Vegas, they said they had 10,000 fans down there. It's quite extraordinary to see. It's hard to get into and hard to get out of, but for so far as a promotion for the game and putting the game on the big stage, and again, the question is asked, what sort of effect is that having in the USA? Well, the locals really like it. Like the people that were working in and around the hotels that I saw, as soon as you talk and they know your accent, oh, you're here for the rugby. They still call it rugby, but
they call it rugby in Melbourne, so don't worry about it.
It's great having you fellas here, and they knew more about it. And the jerseys on the streets was the thing. Big Warriors following across there. There was saw a lot of those. The English made for a great atmosphere as well, because there was a big Wigan contingent, and Warrington. Warrington didn't play that well. Wigan were great, but no, it was.
So you're sweet with Canterbury going? Tick.
I am, and I'm sure our management is and board. And look, I think our fans expect that at some stage they want to be a part of it as well, and I'm sure our fans will support it wholeheartedly. I can just see that every club's fans will want them to go.
Yeah,
and I can't see it. I don't see an end to this.
No way.
I don't think it's a gimmick. I think they're going to keep going back there, and logistically we'll get better at handling it and how we do the travel and.
They've got a deal there until the end of 2028, I think, in Vegas.
Yeah, well, I think the deals will improve, and I think the offerings for people that want to travel will get better. There was some large part. Like Vegas is such a big place. Like it's amazing if you haven't been there. And I first started going there back in the 80s and 90s. I used to work for a gaming company, a poker machine company called Aristocrat Leisure, and we used to take trade shows across there. So I saw a bit of it early on. And the first hotel I ever stayed in at Vegas was a place called the Flamingo. It was quite famous, and it had a big, bright flamingo with the lights out the front. And it was the biggest place on the strip. Now it's the smallest. Like what's grown around them is just incredible. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of walking to get where you need to go. So you need to get your runners on, and you need to get yourself active before you get over there. But
sounds like a few people needed a bit of a walk.
Well, the walking got slower as the week went on. I can tell, and there's all sorts of any food you want is there. You can go and find it. There's entertainment. There's shows. There's it's a lot of the boys on their day off went and saw the Grand Canyon, which I'm sure I didn't go over, but I'm sure that would have been spectacular. And a lot of them went out golfing and doing different things. There was a hockey game on. There was a basketball game on. A lot of them got tickets too. So. Yeah, plenty of entertainment, plenty to do, a spectacular stadium, greatest stadium I've ever seen in my life.
That's amazing. What a wrap.
The hospitality and the catering and the crowd control. Like it was brilliant. It really was, like out of this world.
All right. Has Gus signed a player? We'll ask him a bit later in the podcast because he went to the Combine. I'm fascinated with if you turned up any talent there.
No. Dear.
Not many people leave Vegas as winners, but the Raiders are the big winners out of Vegas.
Yes! They were great. They were really great. And it was interesting. Their preparation, they went straight into Vegas. They were there for 9 days, allowed the players a bit of free time early on, and then got straight into the serious stuff of getting ready for the game and performed extremely well. Very impressed with them. They were fast and they were fit.
Oh, they were ready to roll, eh?
Yeah, their forwards worked hard. They got some really good speed in the back line, scored some nice tries. Really, the Warriors were never in it. The Raiders looked really fit and fast. I was talking to Ricky before the game and after the game. He was really happy with them. He knew they'd win. And I watched one of their training sessions from sort of a distance, and there was plenty of energy, plenty of talk, and they were just too good for the Warriors on the night. And it's a really good-looking side, hard-working side.
Good pack. Always had a good pack, but
they have. Well, they've got these fellas out wide now. I mean, these these outside backs. I mean, KO Weeks played fullback. I mean, he's absolutely blistering. Tamale and Tomoko, Sebastian Chris and Xavier Savage. I mean, you give him half an inch, he's gone. The halves are productive, they're creative, and the forwards are very hard-working. It's a nicely balanced team. A lot of people have spoken about they haven't been able to attract big names, but underneath that, they've been doing a really good job with their pathways coming through, and Ricky Stewart's very happy where they are at the moment. They got a couple of suspensions out of the game, which he wasn't happy about. That were a bit harsh, but nevertheless, they got the 2 points. That will have to be counted a little bit as we look to see the quality of the opposition going forward. I think in our season preview, we indicated that the Warriors had lost a lot of important players. Aden Fanua-Blake, Tohu Harris, Sean Johnson's retired. Even a player like Juz Tavanga, who's been such an integral part of the makeup of that side. And they just looked...
disjointed.
They looked disjointed. They looked a little bit off the pace, and they were just handled quite comfortably by the Raiders. The Raiders were never in any danger in the game. The Warriors kept trying right till the end. They scored the last try in the first half and the last try in the second half, but from a scoreboard perspective, they were just never in it, so they've got some work to do, and the Raiders move on.
But they're missing a few in the outside backs, you said a couple of weeks ago, the Warriors.
Yeah, so Rocco Berry's injured.
Yeah.
Dylan Watene-Zelezniak broke his wrist, so he's not back for some time. Well, there's a bit of concern about Rocco, whether he gets back for some months. I mean, he's...
Really?
Yeah. So
he's a gun.
It's one of those ones that could improve quickly, or it might not improve in the short term at all. And Dylan breaking his wrist wasn't helpful either. So they'll probably go back and reassess.
Is Metcalf a halfback? I thought he's more of a 5'8".
Well, he came through as a halfback. He was a halfback as a kid. He won a couple of Harold Matson and SG ball competition playing halfback. He played with players like Jamin Salmon, Bronson Zeri, were in those sort of really good young Cronulla sides. I watched a fair bit of those because my son was playing in the sides, and so that's where I knew all those boys from. And they were a good side. And Metcalf's he was always a smaller player, so it's always going to take him time. And he's been on the journey and persevered really strongly, but. I think he's more a 7, but I haven't had a lot to do with him personally. I don't know. The coach will know better than that. They've got some work to do. They're the Warrior.
4 games in Vegas is too many. Well, in one day, why couldn't they have 2 days there?
Put it this. Well, the cost of opening the stadium and getting everyone in and out, and whether or not the crowd would turn up 2 days in a row. I suppose there'll be reasons why. It might only be able to get the stadium for one day. You don't know. I mean, but when I say that, I mean I had no problem sitting through the 4 games. We went out and watched them all and sat there, and we were entertained, and there was enough to do in between games. And
in your chairman's lounge, you could watch 50 games.
The seats were comfortable. I wasn't drinking alcohol, so I was fine, and I was still engaged right to the last minute of the Panthers game. So.
I think the scoreline in the women's game didn't help.
Well, we kind of warned them. We said this is going to be 100-0.
Yeah.
Like, they're not going to be able to compete with our girls.
No.
Our girls have been playing in these competitions and rep football for a few years now, and the UK just doesn't have that for the women's game at the moment. They're really much in the embryo stage. They're going to have to develop that a lot better before they're competitive. So, and it was probably the timing of that game too, putting it in between the 2 NRL games at that part of the day. Even the English game, I mean, Wigan, had they got serious, could have won by 70 or 80. I mean, they were just that much better than Warrington. It wasn't funny. It was, what did it end up? Nearly 50 to 48 to something?
48, 20 something.
Yeah, Warrington scored a few tries late. And the Warriors-Raiders game, again, it was dominant. The last game with the 2 best sides, they're the 2 top 4 sides, as we indicated in the season preview. I thought it was a really good quality game for a season opener on a big stage like that. Like, it's hard to play with such a build-up to game 1 of the season. It was kind of like an Origin or finals type build-up into the game. So I thought all the players from both sides did it really well, and Sharks showed me that they're going to be very, very comfortable in that upper echelon of teams this year. Panthers, removed all doubts about their depth and their ability to cover for players that they lost. And actually, they weren't full strength either. Brian Tyler didn't play, and they lost Casey McLean.
No Liam Henry. So you're saying 4 games would be okay, provided that there's not a 100-0 well, 100 to 4.
I think if the
blowout.
games were more competitive,
Yeah.
I think the games were more competitive and the scheduling of the games. I think the NRL would have learnt something from the day. I don't know that 4 games is too many if they're the right games.
Couldn't agree more. On the subject of Wigan, it's time for Bevan French to come back to the NRL.
No. He can play at least 60 over there. He's just brilliant. Good luck to him. I think I've told this story before. Over the years, there's been a few players, when they go away to these schoolboy camps and they go away to these knockout competitions and that, every now and then they come back talking about one player.
Yeah, you said he was all
And
the
Bevan
rage.
French was that one player that year. And he came back and he kind of went to Parramatta and he was sort of rushed and got into first grade and probably wasn't ready for it mentally. Physically, he probably wasn't ready for it. Then all of a sudden you've got all the scrutiny and all the opinion, and which is very, very hard on a young player, and whether or not he had the support system around him. And so he's ended up in the UK at a very young age, but established himself over there as the leading playmaker in the game, the greatest scoreboard influencer. His game the other day was outstanding. If he came back to the NRL, though, where would he play? Where would they play him? He was seen as a fullback here, ended up on the wing. He's gone across there and he's playing 5'8" and doing outstandingly well.
It's not easy, as you know better than anyone. It's not easy finding top-notch halves. There'd be clubs falling over signing, wouldn't there?
But I think it suits him there. I think it suits him there. I just don't know that. Maybe he'd like to. I don't know. I actually spoke to him when I went to the UFC centre. Wigan were just getting off the bus to come in. Luke Thompson was there, and young Adam Kieran. Actually had a quick chat with him, and he's very, very happy in what he's doing. I think it's great for the UK game to have a player like that. We need probably more players going across there and helping them with their competition. They need to work more on their development. I think there's some big news coming up in the next few weeks in the UK about their game and
Hang on,
some changes.
You got a scoop.
I've always got scoops, mate.
This is your podcast. This is your platform.
I'm sworn to secrecy. Anyway, so I think, I don't think there's any need for him to come back. He's earning really good money. He's enjoying life. He's loving his football. If he wanted to come back, I suppose. But I don't think there's any need for him to come back to prove anything. He's doing brilliantly over there.
Perhaps this next question and answer might be a reason for Bevan French to consider coming back, because my last question is Dylan Brown will sign with the Newcastle Knights. Yes! Because they've tabled a massive 10-year, $13 million offer.
Well, I'm only saying that because if he doesn't sign that deal, either Dylan or those around him need to be locked up.
Dylan's a dill.
You should be tying them to a fence and signing that straight away. What's the hesitation? If someone's offered you that, what's the hesitation? If that's why he was putting himself on the market to find out what he was worth. And I can't possibly imagine there are 2 clubs in the market at that value. I just can't believe that.
You've never heard of a deal like this before. I mean, they're saying it's the richest deal in the game's history.
Yeah, there'll be more of these to come. I think the first 10-year deal we saw was Taumalolo, wasn't it?
Yes.
Some time ago.
Yep.
I very early in his career, I discussed a 10-year deal for Nathan Cleary with his father, who was reluctant to do it at the time. But
would have been good shopping now.
would have been extremely good shopping now, because Nathan had no risk factors. Like there were, when you're going to sign someone for 10 years, you've got to look at all the risk factors of what could happen during that decade. And with Nathan, there was just no risk factors from my perspective. But it's who was the latest one? Tino for Suamala Awi from the Gold Coast has just signed a 10-year deal. I don't believe in 10-year deal for forwards.
Did he sign a 10-year deal?
Yeah, with Gold Coast, yeah.
Was that the one he could have got out of?
Yeah, that's what led to them signing him.
So he signed... my memory's not great at this time of the year. So when Des went there...
Yeah, he had the clause to get out when...
So they signed him for 10 years?
10 years.
Oh, crikey.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Well, both he and Fafita had clauses to get out, and they ended up getting upgrades and extensions.
10 years for a prop? Wow.
Yeah, look, there are only certain types of players that I would even consider that with. as we've discussed many times on this podcast, the age of our good playmakers in this game today are all in their mid-30s. You know, the career of an NRL player for an NRL playmaker is probably between 25 and 35 now, years of age. So there's been a shift. And Dylan Brown's just approaching that age now. Has Dylan Brown done enough in his career to suggest that he's in the upper echelon of halves? Well,
not yet.
We obviously have a shortage of halves, but he hasn't got into that sort of stratosphere at the moment. I think it's an extraordinarily, how can I put it? I mean, I'm not into telling clubs how to do their business, but that just typifies the lack of playmaker talent coming through the system that someone like Dylan Brown has attracted. Now, Dylan's a good player. Don't get me wrong. He's a genuine NRL player. He's representative class. He's represented New Zealand. But $1.3 million for 10 years. Remembering, too, that, you know, from 2028 onwards, we're going to have an expansion of teams. We don't know what broadcast rights is going to look like. We don't know what sort of money's coming into the game. They've committed all this money for all this period of time. I mean, it's a huge gamble, I think, both from a football perspective and a money perspective. And
is it fair to say if you're going to sign a player to agree to that kind of deal, from the player's point of view, you've got to influence results, you know, weekly. Like you've got to be a Thurston John style influencer of games.
They've got to win you 60 or 70% of your games.
Yeah.
You know, and I've said there are very, very few $1 million players from my perspective in the game. Even now the salary cap's getting towards $12 million. For me, there are very, very few $1 million players. But that's become because of supply and demand, the shortage of key players in certain positions. Now, the ones that are commanding big money are your playmakers and your front rowers. To some respects, I think the playmakers are underpaid, and the middle forwards are probably overpaid. The middle forwards don't play 80 minutes every week for a start. You've got to pay someone else to play the 30 minutes that they're not playing. So you sign a front rower for over $1 million. And
why are props getting so much money then?
Well, because there was a shortage.
There's a shortage of props.
A genuine shortage of props at NRL. NRL's hard, mate. The new rules, it's hard. And the NRL rules and the style of middle forwards that they use now are different, you know, and it's hard to get there. I mean, it's hard for the young players to come in and compete at that level. That's why players are playing older. Sports science, full-time training, and the way that they keep them on the field, and the money now, they're incentivised to stay in the game. And, you know, we've got to look at the whole restructuring of pathways and development and junior contracts and rookie contracts, because to play in the NRL, you need to be fully developed and you need to have the best part of your career in front of you. And Dylan Brown's, I think, has got his best football in front of him. I think this is an extraordinary gamble, but it reflects. And look, if all the reports of what Kalen Ponga is on at the Newcastle Knights,
yeah,
and then you throw this one on top of it,
yeah,
like they're going to be taking the best part of $3 million for two players. That's 25% of your cap. It's more than 25% of your cap. That's a huge investment in two players. Huge investment in two players.
Mind you, I suppose it's been Melbourne's philosophy, hasn't it?
They invest strongly in their spine.
Yeah.
And then fill in around it.
Everyone
Yeah.
So Adam O'Brien's
that's one
taken
model.
the Melbourne playbook.
That's one model.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
not everyone can find 4 international class spine players to put in their side.
Well, if they sign Brown, they've got 2.
That's why I kept saying I think the Tigers can make the 8, because when I look at their spine, you know, Coruscant and Galvin and Luai and Jureen Buller, I know a couple of them are very young, but the other 2 are proven performers. I mean, they can develop into a really class spine. You compare that with some of the spines getting around. And I mean, it's hard for young people to break into it. And it's because of supply and demand, they get way too much money too early, which only puts more pressure on them. This is a whole podcast just on its own about the development of playmakers and all that. But
might I say your comments about the West Tigers have inspired great optimism amongst the Tigers fans out there.
They should be excited. I'm excited.
They're over the moon with you. You copped so many raps, more raps than you've copped in 20 years from all the Tigers fans after your declaration.
I've been out of the country.
Dylan Brown's got to around 10 to make his mind up, though. So
what do you
this
mean?
is the strange thing. He's got a contract until 2031. But if he wants to get out of his deal, he's got till round 10 this year.
Well, they had to take those clauses out of Mitchell Moses.
Well, they've done that with
to
Moses.
get him an extension.
Yeah.
So I would say what they've done there with Mitchell Moses would indicate to me that they don't expect Dylan Brown to be staying.
No.
Because they've said, well, we can't lose both. So
Yeah.
they've gone out and got Mitchell Moses done straight away, which is smart. And Mitchell Moses is nearly 30 now, I think, and they've signed him for a 5-year deal. So they're anticipating he's going to be one of these players that plays well into his 30s, and he should. But it seems to me like they're resigned to the fact that Dylan's going to go. Now, 12 months ago, they thought they'd signed Dylan for 6 or 7 years. You know, now they've got him for 2 years, and Dylan's on his bike and heading out the door. What's delaying the Dylan Brown signing at Newcastle? If that's true, if that's what they've offered him, if that's true and just not media scuttlebutt,
Show me the money.
if that's true, time to a fence. Sign that deal. Don't let him get away.
Can I play just the other side of this debate with respect to Parramatta? You want to keep quality halves like you've elaborated upon. But if Brown leaves, that frees up a hell of a lot of money for them.
Yeah, I don't know what his deal is. I think it's
big money.
The 8s and 9s,
Yeah.
I think he's in, yeah.
That frees up a lot of salary cap space. And there's probably some slots they need to fill there.
Salary cap space doesn't win your games. Footballers win your games. You've got to replace him.
Yeah. But
You've got to replace him.
yeah.
You've got to replace him. That's why Dylan Brown's been offered this big money, because he's the only genuine playmaker on the market at the moment. As you say, Bevan French could probably get himself a fortune somewhere if he wanted to come back to Australia.
Well, he might be back at Parramatta.
If his money was motivation, then now's the time to do it, because there is a desperation in some of the negotiating that we're seeing in the NRL at the moment. This is the other thing. It's not just the cost of the player, right? And I imagine this is going through Newcastle's mind and where they are at the moment. And it's often the question I ask of whatever club I'm with: if not him, then who? What's the cost of getting him? What's the cost of not getting him? So if Newcastle don't get this player, what's their alternative?
Yeah.
There are no alternatives at the moment.
They've
Right?
got
And
a
that's what
thousand halves.
That's what Parramatta are thinking. Well, crikey, if he goes, what now? Well, now we can't lose Mitchell Moses. That actually put Mitchell Moses in a great negotiating position because they can't afford to lose both of them. Put it this way, all right? Let's say every player in the game was off contract at the same time. Let's do a what's the Indian Premier League, like the cricket, where they go on auction play. Let's say
that'd be fun.
Let's say every NRL player is off contract at the end of the year.
Oh, I'd love to do that.
And the 17 clubs sit in a big room,
Righto.
and one by one, in alphabetical order, they roll out every player.
Can I go first?
Eh?
Can I be the club that goes first?
Yeah.
Nathan Cleary.
Then what are you going to pay him?
What's my salary cap?
$12 million.
$2 million a year.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think?
All right. So someone bids 2-1.
Yeah, I didn't think about this. So this is a negotiation, is it?
It's an auction.
Well, I've come in with my best price first.
Yeah, but it's got to 2. It's like the house you want to buy.
What would you pay? You know the salary cap better than anyone. What would you pay Nathan Cleary in an auction?
$2.5 million.
Wow. So he's being underpaid that much for his status in the game.
Well, I don't know that he's being. I mean, he probably earns it corporately.
Well, of course,
if he wanted to. But I'm just saying, if you actually put people up for auction and emotion got the better of everybody, what these players would be earning, they'd spend their salary cap very, very quickly. Who would be the number one player in the game that you would buy? And you know, these players like your Reece Walsh and your Nathan Cleary and Jerome, someone would pay extraordinary money for them, which shows you that at the moment, I think the quality playmakers are probably underpaid.
Yeah.
But the problem with that is, if Nathan Cleary is a $2 million player, then every other halfback takes his rating off that. You know?
Well, Mitch Moses.
So it raises the cost of the average player or the emerging player. So he's going to be the next best thing. This kid, we've got a lot of halfbacks out there at the moment that you haven't even heard of that are on big money, in hope that they come through to be a really good player. Like they'll speculate and gamble on young fellas coming through, and we all do it to try and predict the next one coming through. But only one in so many actually makes it to the top.
That would be so much fun if we could do a simulated NRL player auction.
Well, let's put it. Yeah,
how could we do that?
Let's do it. Well, you could do it with AI. Let's put it. Every player's off contract now, right now, heading into the 2026 season, and we all sit in a big room, and one by one we auction them off from number 1 through to number 30, from player 1 through to player 30.
Okay.
How would you?
Maybe we should do.
You'd spend your money before we got to the centres.
Yeah, well, I do anyway.
Yeah.
Maybe we should do this every week. We should do a different position and throw it out to the audience. What do you think?
What's that?
Well, we can let our listeners and viewers on YouTube and Nine Now.
So you're the CEO.
You're the CEO of a club?
Yeah, you're a recruitment manager of a club.
We're starting in the halves.
We'll start with fullback. Start with number 1.
We're just talking about halves.
Well, let's start at number 1. Why would you start at number 7?
Okay, well, no, start at the halves because they're the big money. See,
but you've got to save them.
But that's what we're going to test our audience. We've got to test our audience. Halves.
You want to start with halves?
Start with halves.
So you want them to rank the halves in money order, and what would you spend on a halfback and who would you pay?
And remember, don't come in with the biggest bid first. I've just blown the whole thing up.
Yeah. Well, if you go to a house auction and you really want the house,
yeah,
and your budget's $500,000, and someone bids $510.
Shit.
Yeah. Okay, I'll go again.
Yeah. That's good. I like that. Okay, let's do that. Let's do that. Let's see what happens.
So you want to start with halfbacks this week?
Yeah. Well, let's not forget Munster in these.
I think the really good playmakers are probably underpaid.
Yeah,
now, they're probably earning it corporately anyway.
Yeah.
If their management's doing the right thing, and you've got some really high-profile, halves out there. But from a salary cap perspective, I think the percentage of the salary cap taken up by your chief leader, playmaker, scoreboard influencer, goal kicker, if they've got the whole package, I think they're underpaid. Yeah.
Have you ever bought a house at an auction?
Yeah.
I wouldn't trust myself at an auction. I find it too nerve-wracking.
Yeah.
How'd you go? Did you blow your budget?
I didn't. No, I bought 2 houses.
Yeah.
When I first moved to the Roosters, I was living at Leonay out at Penrith.
Yeah.
And obviously couldn't live out there to come to the Roosters, so I bought a little place.
6-bedroom beachside palace.
No.
Right on Coogee Beach.
I guarantee you no. It was a little semi-detached in Spring Street, Bondi Junction, just down from the Leeds Club, so it was very, very central. And I was single at the time. And so I went to an auction there, paid too much for it. And then many, many years later, the house that I'm living in now, I bought at an auction back in 2002.
So did you go over both times?
Yeah.
If the great salary cap manager himself has even blown his budget at house auctions.
Yeah, but if you're gonna stay in it, if it's your house, if it's an investment property, that's different.
Yes.
But and I'm never one to invest in investment properties and all that sort of thing. I'm not a money maker. I'm a money spender.
Why would you do that when you could invest in horse flesh?
I only get one life. But the house I'm living, I paid too much for it. My wife didn't even know I was bidding. She didn't know I was bidding, and then she turned around and saw I had my hand up and nearly died.
We
didn't have it either.
What's that?
We didn't have the money we bid.
Yeah, but you were coaching the Roosters, so it wouldn't be hard to find. Ask Gus this year has a sponsor. Our great friends from Tab have come on board to sponsor Ask Gus. The NRL season is here. For the best time in sport, Tab has the best app in sport. Tab, we are on.
What's gambling really costing you? For free and confidential support, visit gamblinghelponline.org.au.
Now, Jesse, with the question everyone has been waiting to ask. Thoughts on the Vegas Combine and the 2 male winners? Can they successfully make the switch to rugby league? Now, if my head's been up my blurter, I apologise. They were winners of the Combine?
There was a lot of physical testing at the Combine, so I went there and sat and watched it.
Yeah.
So they kind of ran it like a pre-season fitness testing type thing. So they went through a whole range of different things with them, and I don't know where a lot of the players were from. I actually met one of the elite NFL players who was at the Combine, a fellow that played for LA. I forget his name now.
Oh, you got a photo with him?
Yeah, I got a photo with him.
Not the bloke that got kicked out after blowing the Viking.
No. I got a photo of him at the combine. I was talking to him. I said, where do college players go in America that don't make the draft? And he said there's very few options for them. So it's pretty much cutthroat across there, you know. And I don't know where the guys came from that were in the combine. You know, it was a good exercise, and there were some fellas there really trying. Whether they then played a bit of a I don't know how many. It might have been 12-a-side or 11-a-side game towards the end of it. They'd done a lot of physical testing during it, and obviously our testing for our game is a hell of a lot different to the game that they're used to. So, you know, you probably wouldn't be signing them on testing results. They did men's and women's.
Yeah.
Right. The young girl that I spoke to didn't train at all. She was sitting behind me. We were just in a little tent there watching the action, and she'd come. She hadn't been invited to the combine, but she played in the USA Sevens team, in the Olympic team, and she sort of come down to network and meet people. She had a broken rib and couldn't train. She was, a lovely girl, 30 years of age. She'd been in the military. She'd been playing rugby for 10 years, professional rugby for 10 years. She come down of her old bat to meet someone, so I was just very lucky, saw her there, heard her talking, sort of pulled her aside and had a good yarn to her, and I've been in contact with her 3 or 4 times since. She wants to play rugby 15s in the World Cup. Is there a women's rugby World Cup this year, 15s or something? So our training doesn't start till May for the NRLW this year. She'd definitely like to come for 2026, but depending on how she fares in selection processes over there. I think the USA Sevens team was a bronze medalist at the Olympics. She was a part of that squad, so she sent me some tapes of her, very, very good. So she wasn't in the combine, but she came down to the combine. On the field over the other side, there was a nines competition going on, some with other nations and sort of an amateur nines. And I know because the Roosters sponsor it, they got their own LA Roosters in LA, a team they sponsor over there, and Nick Politis sponsors the Greek team as well. So they had a team in the nines competitions over there, men's and women's. It was all very well run. It was great promotion for the game. It's more promoting the game and more engaging the locals in that sort of area. As to whether or not there's been any, I know that the Roosters last year signed a couple of young girls to come and play in the NRLW, but it didn't eventuate. It all became a little bit logistically too hard for them. And even with this young girl, who was very impressive, and she's had quite a history. She's been a wrestler. She's been in the military. She's a really strong girl. And just the way she's conducted the interviews and kept in contact and getting me information, etc.
So at this stage, you see it more as a pathway for the NRLW, which is very important because we're expanding the NRLW competition, and we have to find the talent.
I've spoken about this. I had this experience myself because many, many years ago when we were at the Roosters, we brought out a couple of college athletes who had just missed the draft and, you know, were looking for something to do. And Nick Politis brought them out to Australia, and they were tremendous. They were outstanding athletes, absolutely outstanding athletes. But the nuances of our game were just too difficult for them. If you could have got them at 14 and 15 years of age, different story. But, you know, how are you going to identify them at that age? They were great athletes. The games are just too different to be expecting someone who's coming out of the NFL. Like even the fella, even the bloke who was a pro, he'd had a professional career. Just looking at him, he wouldn't handle a training session that our blokes do. You know, like you could just tell.
Right.
They play a completely different sort of game. They play in 4-second bursts and plenty of rest time between each, and it's about size and power and, you know, where our game is more speed and endurance and all that sort of thing.
So if the NRL wants to
that's what makes it more incredible what Jarrett Hayne did, to actually go over there and play in an NFL game. Absolutely incredible. I think there's more opportunity for our blokes to play their game for them to play us.
Yes, okay. But if the NRL wants to use the US as a breeding ground, because as you touch on, that they're remarkable athletes that don't always make it at the top level, they're going to have to start very young. But they'll have to set a grassroots academy style.
As I understand it now, there are rugby league competitions over there. There is people there trying to establish a 10-team professional league across there. There are rugby competitions in colleges and high schools across there. There is rugby in the United States, and it's It's where you get your grounding. I just don't think that the player that's come through as an NFL player is going to be able to come across and play NRL. He might be able to play Park NRL. I'm not saying he can't play NRL, but Park Rugby League.
Yeah.
But in the NRL, that's too big an ask. That really is too big an ask. And I'm not sure that thinking of getting NFL players or kids that have been out of college, but if you got them young enough and they're in schools and college, if they can establish competitions across there young enough and then be able to find talent in those that might be worth bringing across and putting in our pathways programs here. You're not going to produce NRL talent. I keep saying this. You're not going to produce any NRL talent anywhere in this country without it being in an NRL program. That's you're not going to do it in junior league. You're not going to do it in state league. You're not going to do it. They need to be in an NRL pathways program.
One of your bugbears, maybe, is that the right word, was the abolition of the under-20s competition. Keith Carey asks you, who was a player from the under-20s competition who never made the NRL but you thought would?
Oh, crikey.
There are heaps that played a handful of games but didn't have long careers that were stars at under-20 level.
Yeah. Yeah, there are some that never got through to first grade. I mean, there are a lot of challenges, and this is when I was talking about Nathan Cleary in a 10-year deal, risk factors. You know, some players are risk factors. They come from very humble beginnings and, their life, prior to getting to this sort of age has been difficult, and they've faced many, many challenges, and you face many challenges as you're emerging, either through injury or through circumstance or family or other things that can happen to you. So there are plenty of things that can go against you and stop them making it to the top. A lot of talented players. What I do know is that, to give you an idea, I remember one year we won a Harold Matts competition at the Panthers. It was under 16s. Right. 2 years later in the under 18s, only 2 of those players made the side.
Really?
Yeah. I don't know what the current day percentages were, but around that time, the elite under 16s Harold Matthews competition, which was seen as the start of the pathways for NRL, I think only about 4% of those played NRL, which shows you the funnel narrows very, very quickly.
I reckon that'd be replicated in a lot of sports.
Yeah, and even the stars of your 16s and your 18s and 20s competitions don't necessarily make NRL players. And some of the players that I know that there are NRL players who didn't make those junior rep teams.
That was just going to ask that. To assume that you have to come through that junior rep pathway and be a star at that level isn't always correct.
I think you have to be in it,
Yeah.
but it doesn't mean you have to be a star in it. To give you an example, this is the one that immediately comes to mind. Young fella from Dorrigo used to be driven down every weekend to sit on the bench for SG Ball and never got a game all year. Couldn't make the side. Well, the coach didn't think he could make the side in SG Ball, which was under 18s at the time. His name was Dylan Edwards.
Yeah.
So just because you're not making, it's what I say to players every year, just because you're not making it at the moment, don't panic. It's about perseverance and staying. Some kids get there at 18, some don't get there till the 22, 23, but there are plenty of examples of stars and young fellas at 16 and 18 years of age who are dominant in their age group football, but never go on to be NRL players. And there are just as many who weren't stars at that age. They weren't standouts, probably didn't even make the team. If you want to go right back, every talent scout in the league passed on Jonathan Thurston at 18 years of age. Too small, can't tackle. That was the scouting report. Talented, but too small, can't tackle. Will never be big enough, will never be tough enough. Jonathan Thurston, an immortal. Played till he was 36.
He's not an immortal yet.
Well,
is this the scoop? You've given your scoop away.
No.
There's another immortal.
Yeah, he will be, baby. But I'm just saying, and that's the beauty of pathways, and that's the difficulty as well. It's in trying to set up a pathways program to develop NRL talent, you have to have a level of football and training for everyone, and this is where talented people are very good at this. In being able to persevere with the right personality type, the right character type, the physicality. Some of these fellas are really good at looking at 16-year-olds and telling you what they're going to look like at 21, 22. Like the best player in the world at the moment, the best player in the world is Asai Yeo. The best footballer in the world is Asai Yeo. But he wasn't dominant in age group football. In fact, in under 18s, they sent him back to Dubbo
Yes.
to play A grade against men. He came back and played in an under 20s premiership winning team where he was not the star player by any stretch of the imagination.
And in many people's eyes watching Penrith play, you wouldn't, I mean, to the uninitiated, you wouldn't identify him as the star player, would you?
Not in those days.
But even now, if you weren't au fait with the intricacies of the game.
Yeah, I think if you went and asked anyone at Penrith,
Of course. But
anyone who knows the game is now seeing what he does.
Of course.
His game over there on the weekend was absolutely outstanding. He doesn't play, they don't win.
Well, he does it every week.
He was absolutely phenomenal.
Does it every
He
week.
was a goal. I said last year. Last year was the player of the year from here to Ying. He won the Golden Boot. He was the best player in the world.
He had, do you know, individually last year, there's a debate he's had the greatest season in the history of the sport.
Could well have.
Captain the premiership winning team for the fourth year in a row. He was vice-captain of Origin, but was captain for most of the time. Captained Australia.
Yeah.
Golden Boot. Dally M Lock of the Year. Dally M Captain of the Year.
Plays 80 minutes every week. And even during the Origins, where other players were stood down, he played. He said, no, I'll play.
Played 25 games.
Yeah.
And in the last 5 years, he's won 85% of the games he's played.
Yeah. Extraordinary.
There you go.
Well, what was the question?
I don't know.
Did I know of a young player that never made it?
Yeah.
Yeah, plenty.
The answer's a pineapple. 6 tackle trivia. So in getting ready to call Sunday's game, I came across a little bit of research. Ronaldo Mulatalo is Cronulla's third greatest try scorer ever.
Really?
Did you know that? At this early stage, what you would think is his early stages of his career.
Lovely boy.
So who are the two ahead of him? There's your question on the way to the break. Only 2 ahead of him on the Cronulla try scorers list.
Wow.
Break and back with more.
Fans always ask, Lozza, what was the best era of league? And I tell them, nothing beats the line-breaking, flick-passing, goose-stepping, Vegas flying, turbo try-scoring, origin drought-breaking, simply the best era of footy we're in right now. And with more market stats and insights, it's easy to enjoy the best era in footy with the best app in footy.
Tab. We're on.
What's gambling really costing you? For free and confidential support, visit gamblinghelponline.org.au.
Well, number one, I was actually I was talking to him in Vegas. Would be Andrew Ettinghausen.
Correct. Did you see he had a photo? See, he had a photo with Elle McPherson again.
Yeah. Andrew Ettinghausen. So he was over there representing the Sharks, and he loved it, and he thought it was terrific across there. Still looks like he could play.
I know.
Doesn't look like he's aged today.
No.
I don't know.
Yeah.
He must stand in cow manure every night. He's pristine.
Do you enjoy coaching him? You had him in the Origin.
He was one fella. Every now and then you coach a bloke and he really shocks you.
Yeah.
Like Andrew Ettinghausen was one of the toughest and most competitive men that I ever coached.
Toughest?
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, wow.
One of the toughest, the most passionate and most competitive footballers I ever coached.
You could see he's passionate.
He really was, and he had an inner toughness. He had it's like from the outside looking in, but to actually meet him and work with him, and I had the great pleasure of coaching him for several seasons at the Origin level. He was one of the most passionate and toughest and really brilliant Origin players, and extremely tough individual, and a lovely, lovely bloke, lovely man.
Good fella. Loves fishing.
Yeah.
So who's second?
Rogers? Not Peachy.
Yes, it's Peachy.
Peachy.
David Peachy.
Yeah, David Peachy.
There you go. They've had some cracking outside backs this
I
year.
was thinking, that's a great effort from a fullback, isn't it?
Oh, but for a few years there, he was just electric, wasn't
Yeah, he was. I got some great David Peachy stories. I thought I had him in Origin once, but
Well, go on.
nah,
Why?
not fair.
Well, look, we nearly cracked it for an Oscar on Monday, this podcast.
Why is that?
We're just nosed out. Just nosed out for an Oscar.
Oh, the Oscars been on.
Yeah, you're in the air.
Who won the Oscars?
No idea. Wouldn't have a clue.
Wouldn't you?
So in order to try and supercharge our bid for an Oscar next year, we've decided to bring in this fantastic new segment.
Funny game, professional football. What about what's the name of it? The obstructors and the
the disruptor
and the blokes pushing on
and
people?
lending.
What's lending?
It's a little bit funny.
It's a funny thing with this competition. You people are on drugs.
That's the first time I've heard that. That's funny. It's a funny game, rugby league, someone once told me.
Yeah.
So Gus is worried about this segment because he doesn't know if he can bring any gold every week. Have you got any gold to start?
I've got a lot that I can't tell you.
Why, come on.
No.
So
It's a funny
I'll
game.
tell you what's funny about rugby league fans. Many of them don't go to the footy in Sydney because it's too expensive.
Right.
Yet we get 20,000 fly to Vegas, and then they go and get their accommodation, etc. And then they pay $25 for a beer at the stadium.
Yeah.
Not that you have to worry about that. They reckon it's about $13 for a Coke.
Yeah.
Hot dogs are about 25 Australian. They're happy to fork out for that, but they blow up in Sydney.
I had the best hot dog
Yeah.
and the best chocolate milkshake at Las Vegas Airport.
Oh.
It was an old-fashioned diner called Ruby's Diner.
Oh.
And I don't like hot dogs, but I have one when I go to America just to have a hot dog, you know. But it was outstanding.
So can we rewind the tape? You don't like hot dogs?
Eh?
You don't like hot dogs?
Not generally, no.
Oh,
Well, they're not very healthy.
one of the great indulgences.
Yeah, but no, I wouldn't say I'm a hot, but I don't mind an American hot dog, just a basic hot dog.
Did you
but
have
the
mu-
chocolate thick shake was out of this world. It was absolutely
So a
outstanding.
thick shake, not a milkshake.
Yeah, well, I asked for a milkshake, but they gave me a thick shake.
Well, I'm a
It
thick
was
shake man every day of
brilliant.
the week. Yeah.
And a big dollop of cream on top of it. Oh, it was absolutely outstanding.
Yeah.
Absolutely outstanding.
Did you have mustard with your hot dog?
We went to a buffet in one of the casinos, right?
Yeah.
Now, when I first started going to Vegas back in the 80s, all right, it was famous for its cheap meals. 99-cent breakfast.
Really?
$1.99 for lunch. $2.99 all-you-can-eat buffet. $2.99 all-you-can-eat buffet. Like, the whole thing was obviously paid for by the gambling dollar.
Yeah.
But the attraction was that food and drink was so cheap there.
Right.
Not anymore. Well, you can find places where it's a little bit cheaper than others. But to give you an example, my wife and I went to a buffet breakfast in one of the casinos, one of the leading casinos. It was, I think it was $75 US a head for the breakfast. $75 US a head plus the tip. You got a tip every night.
That's
But
$150.
The buffet's outstanding.
What it'd want to be.
The buffet was outstanding because there was everything you could ever imagine from every taste around the world. You could have Indian food, Chinese food. You could have any sort of food you wanted, right? Any sort of juice, any sort of drink. There was a full bar. There's a full bar there at 5 o'clock in the morning if you want to have, you can drink whatever you like, and it's all, you can have as much as you like. You can have as much as you like.
Gus, for that money, they should be feeding it to you.
I had scrambled eggs on toast and 2 slices of bacon. My wife had a cup of tea and some fruit and yogurt.
And it's cost you $300.
It's a $300 Australian breakfast. And I said, well, thanks for coming to Vegas.
Now, this is the kind of goal we want for this segment. Very good.
It's a funny game.
It is a funny game.
It's a funny game.
Are you serious?
Yeah,
$75 each.
yeah,
So you could have had Indian for breakfast.
yeah. And
Wow.
I saw Hadley dancing to Billy Joel too. Wasn't a pretty sight, but anyway.
Oh, did he go with you, did he? Was
Well,
Ray there?
He was in the audience, yes. We met
Right.
because we know Ray and Sophie well, but we booked tickets for the same show on the same night. I booked them before I went. I thought, we're going to go see some shows. So
Yeah.
I made myself book a couple of shows. And then while we got there, the NRL kindly took us to the Kevin Hart show. But we booked the Piano Man. And when we got there on the night, Ray and Sophie were there.
Mm-hmm.
He was over in the corner, but he was up dancing. I saw him up dancing.
Did you dance?
No.
Did you sing?
Yeah, knew every song, every word.
What's your favourite Billy Joel song?
My favourite Billy Joel song. Roses Are Red one. What's that? Scenes of an Italian Restaurant.
Okay. Not familiar with that one.
Brenda and Eddie were still going steady in the summer of 75 when they decided the marriage would be at the end of July. People, they said they were crazy. Anyway.
This is a great segment.
Yep. Funny game, rugby league.
Well done. See, we've got him. We've got him on board. Can you play that intro again? It's very good.
Funny game, professional football. What's the obstructors and
the disruptor.
and the blokes pushing on
And
people?
lending.
What's lending?
It's a little bit funny.
It's a funny thing with this competition. You people are on drugs.
Well done. I think this will be the X factor when it comes to the Oscars.
I'll tell you the other thing about Vegas too. There's nowhere to sit.
What do you mean?
Well, when you're walking through the casinos or to and from casinos, there's nowhere to sit.
Oh.
The only place to sit's at a card table.
Oh, that's a trap.
Or at a roulette table.
Yeah.
There's nowhere to sit.
So you didn't have one bet?
No, I didn't have a bet.
Is it true? Do they give you free booze if you're punting?
Does
that still
I
happen?
don't know about that. I don't know. I don't know. I wasn't there. A lot of the people I was with were having a gamble late at night. They'd go and play blackjack or roulette or something like that. I suppose, I'm not a big casino games player.
Well, my wife told me she was there many, many years ago, but she reckons and whether it's changed, I don't know. She said that they just sit at a poker machine and put $1 in it and just hit 1 cent and just get free drinks for as long as they wanted in Vegas.
I think they'd work you out.
I think
quickly.
they probably would, yeah. All right, let's have a look at the games to come. Now, I love round one because you see what the coaches have done with respect to their selections, and we start at Allianz tomorrow night for two powerhouse clubs, Roosters versus Broncos, and I reckon these two clubs are the most interesting case studies in the comp.
Mm-hmm.
Tedesco to lead a new-look Roosters team that includes Robert Toya, who I thought had played an NRL game, but he's actually on debut. He's been around for a while through the junior reps, played under 19s Origin, etc. He's in the centres with Mark Nwanganitawase, who plays just his second NRL game.
Say that again for me.
Nwanganitawase.
Nitawase.
Nitawase. He played on the wing last year in his debut and was absolutely sensitive. Scored 2 tries.
Yeah. He's a great athlete.
Oh, he's an absolute beast of a thing. Chad Townsend's halfback, Sandon Smith's 5'8". Nafahu White's playing prop for no JWH. He's over in the UK. On the bench, Blake Steep plays his 4th game, and they've got a rookie, Salesi Feketi.
Yep.
It's a Roosters bench. It's Docker, Clay, Wong, Steep, and Feketi, or Fockety. I'll have to work that out before I call the game tomorrow night. It's a vastly different looking Roosters team to the one that we've become used to. Corey Pakes is going to play hooker for the Broncos. Hasn't played for 2 seasons. Billy Walters goes to the bench. Gamut Shibasaki returns. In the centres with Dean Mariner. They've got no Staggs has gone for 6 weeks. Hunt Reynolds in the halves. They've moved Carrigan to prop. Kobe Hetherington's playing lock. I thought he was on the outer under the previous coach. He's straight into the starting team for round 1. And Billy Walters goes back to the bench, like I said. So different lineups for both clubs to the teams that we've been used to over recent years. But I expect Brisbane to come flying out of the blocks this year.
Well, they're certainly fit. If you look at their trial form, they're certainly fit and they're fast and they're creative and they've got these 2 very, very experienced halves. I'm really looking forward to see how Ben Hunt and Adam Reynolds combine and releasing the great strength they've got out wide here in Selwyn Cobbo and Reece Walsh and Dean Mariner's an exciting young player as well. Jethy Arthurs is one of the most improved players in the game. Looking through the Roosters lineup, and if you remember in the preseason preview, I said that they've lost such an enormous amount of experienced and high-quality talent. I think this team will look vastly different in a couple of months' time, and I think it'll look vastly different again by the time we get to the end of the year. Young Robert Toya, the player you mentioned, we've seen him on the horizons for a number of seasons. I think he's had 2 ACLs and 2 knee reconstructions.
Oh, right.
Yeah, and so he's missed a lot of football, but you're talking about players that dominate their age group. He was just far too good for his age group. I think he would have played NRL 2 seasons ago.
Okay.
As a teenager. So
heard a lot about him.
They've persevered with him all the way through, knowing that he was going to get to this level, and he probably hasn't had the grounding he's needed. He hasn't had the football under his belt that he needed at this age. But on sheer talent, I think he's pretty exceptional. And you're going to see a few of these come through their system. They have got some really good kids. They do invest a lot in their pathways. Because of the success they've had and the quality of play that they've had in their NRL side, they probably haven't had their opportunity as quickly as they should have, and they probably haven't been developed through or transitioned through. I think this year will be a year where we'll see a lot of fellas come out of pathways at the Roosters and transition into the top grade. You can see in this side here that they've got a few sort of older journeyman type players like your Tad Townsends and your Zach Docker Clays and these fellas, I think over time will be replaced by younger fellas coming through the system. Whereas the Broncos, who were extremely disappointing last year after making the grand final and looking premiership winners the year before, under Michael Maguire, have obviously had a pretty searching off-season. They presented the best of all the teams in the competition in the pre-season trials. Not that I read a lot into trial form, but I look more at their physicality and their competitiveness, and they had all of that going on for them. Plus, you get steered around by two of the great playmakers in the game in the modern era, in Ben Hunt and Adam Reynolds. So all eyes for me on them and a few of these younger Roosters players, but I would anticipate a Bronco win in that game.
West Tigers, the new look West Tigers up against Newcastle, 6 p.m. Friday. That game is at Campbelltown Sports Ground, or Sports Stadium as it's now known. Jerome Luai plays his first game as a Tiger and is captain in the absence of Api Korosa, who is suspended. Now, Jareem Buller is out because of appendix problems. So Heath Mason, who's played all the trials, stays in the number one. Sunia Taruva's on the wing, makes his club debut alongside Terrell May, Jack Bird, Jarrell Skelton and Royce Hunt. And now, if you haven't seen this online, you need to go have a look. After 70 games in the Queensland Cup across 7 seasons, hooker Tristan Hope makes an NRL debut at the age of 27 off the bench, and one of those excellent behind-the-scenes clips of Benji telling him he was going to make his debut is on their website, and he gets very emotional.
90% of this game, I'll tell you, 90% of this game is turning up.
Yep.
Just keep turning up, on and off the field. When you're on the field, keep turning up to the play. When you're off the field, keep turning up to training and persevere.
For Newcastle, James Schiller makes a club debut. Now, Fletcher Sharp's played. They've signed 100 halves over the last 2 years, and they've turned a fullback and a winger into a 5/8. So Fletcher Sharp and Jack Cogger are their halves for this year. Phoenix Crosland's a hooker. Brayley's on the bench. And also, Adam Elliott and Jackson Hastings have missed out on the team. So they've got a little bit of depth there, a little bit of extra experience. But I suppose all eyes are on the new look Tigers, Gus.
Yeah, they are. And disappointing that Jareem Buller's not playing, because I wanted to see this spine in action, but that'll come. We know about the talent in their back line. We know about the new halves pairing of Lachlan Galvin and Jerome Luai. Adam Dewey is back after a couple of injury-plagued seasons. Sanua Taruva from the Panthers winning premiership sides. But I go to their forward pack. Terrell May and Fanua Polo in the front row, and Alex Twalaback. It's a hard-working side. Samuela Fanu, Alex Seyfarth, and then this young Taylor De Silva, who I think is a really good emerging young playmaker. And then some experience on the bench with Royce Hunt and Jack Bird. And Sione Fainu, who's the third brother of the Fainu brothers, I think's really improved out of sight. So some new combinations there, and you would imagine that will only get better in time. It's not easy to come into your first premiership game and suddenly have everything click. I do have a lot of faith in Jerome Luai to make that sort of happen, but I'm really thinking that probably the more settled of the two sides at the moment looks like Newcastle. I was impressed with their trial form, although the big win over the Roosters, it was hard to gauge just the Roosters' application at that time. This is a really interesting game. I found this the hardest one to pick. I just think on probably the score of familiarity and time spent playing together in certain combinations. Fletcher Sharp is an interesting one because there is no doubt about his attacking prowess.
Yeah.
He's essentially a fullback, but Kalen Ponga will always have a mortgage on that. And General Pay Kalen Ponga looks like he's really come back. I'm probably going to go. I'm probably going to go at this time with the more settled combination. And by that I mean the players that have spent more time playing together. And for me, I think that would be Newcastle. But I wouldn't be surprised if things clicked very, very quickly for the Tigers, because I think Jerome Luai will have them well organised. For me, this was the hardest game of the weekend to pick.
Yeah.
So I'll go with Knight, but I wouldn't be surprised if West Tigers kicked into gear straight away.
Now, Friday night football, the game has been shifted.
What's happened with the cyclone?
Well, look, I just want to say before we get into this to all of our loyal listeners through northern New South Wales and southeast Queensland and up on the Sunshine Coast, we send our very best wishes. I know the Bulldogs have got an academy up on the Northern Rivers.
You know, there were Americans who came up to me and said they listened to the podcast.
Seriously?
Seriously.
What, actual American people?
Actual American people.
Well, to our American audience, hey there. That's great. It should bolster our Oscar claims. Souths, Campbell Graham's back ahead of schedule. Hasn't played forever. Junior Totola missed heaps of last year. He's out. He's in, sorry. He returns from a foot injury. Jai Gray's wearing the number 1. Now, Lewis Dodd suspended from the trial, so Jamie Humphreys is going to get first crack in the halves alongside Cody Walker, Peter Marmazelis as the hooker, and Lachlan Hubner, who joined Wayne Bennett at South Sydney, having played under him at the Dolphins, is going to play lock with no Cameron Murray. And gee, it's funny how things are. It's a funny game, rugby league. Jaden Sullivan, who moved from the Tigers, is on the bench.
On the bench, number 14. He looked pretty fit, Jaden, in the trial games.
And just to bring you up to speed with what's happening with the Dolphins, Daniel Safeti starts at prop, Fina Fuiaki on the edge, Max Plath, who was their player of the year last year, is in the back row, and they get back, Gussie, Tom Gilbert, who's had 2 shocking knee injuries in the last 2 or 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
He's captaining the team. Very interesting game, this one.
And Kula Kefu, Fina Fuiaki is a big buy.
Mm-hmm.
Really interesting one, this. I'm glad to see Campbell Graham back. I thought they really missed him last year. He was a big out for them. Wayne Bennett up against his old team. Will he have a psychological edge over a few of those players? Will they be trying to overread the situation? I don't know. Max Plath has just signed a new deal with the Dolphins. He's a good player.
Very good.
Really good player. I was impressed. Not that I read anything into trial form. I mean, South trialled poorly, but Wayne will have them ready for it. I'm going to go with Dolphin, again, just on the more, they look a little bit more settled to me. I'll go with Dolphin.
Okay.
Yep. Dolphin.
Dolphin to win a home game at Combank, which is a peculiarity. Okay. Takes me back to the 80s, this one. Dragons Bulldogs. What a way to start. 5:30 Saturday afternoon at Jubilee in this brand new Dragons outfit. Gutherson, Fine, Sully, Holmes, Tui Pilotu, Flanagan, Ilias, Couchman, Cook, Gula, Leilua, Sua, DeBellin. And they've got a rookie on the bench, Hamish Stewart, who I think has had big raps on him as well. With respect to your team, Gus, it's fairly settled with the exception of Marcelo Montoya, who returns to the club on the wing, and also Setili Tupanua playing his first game as a Bulldog.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think there'll be some changes before the weekend, but we'll have to check on those later on. So, and a couple of injuries that aren't in this list, and Josh Curran's been suspended. So, the good news for the Dragons is that all those off-season purchases have got through the off-season and made it to round one. Clint Gutherson obviously brings a lot of experience to the team. It's a big side, isn't it? Like, they're big physical side. Valentine Holmes, a new purchase. Lachlan Ilias, a new purchase. Damien Cook, a new purchase. Emre Gula, a new purchase. So they've all made it to round one, which is good for them. Strong-looking bench, big side, plenty of coverage, and plenty of rivalry between the two clubs. So it should be a great game. Just a little unfortunate that we'll have a couple missing, but that'll give some opportunity to some other players. And
Jethro's not going to make his debut, is he?
Jethro's been included in the 22. We've actually had to get, here we are, round one. We've had to get approval for 2 players outside the top 30, and Luke Smith and Ratu Rinakima, that's Jethro, to be in the 23 that we've named. So we're actually outside the top 30 in round one.
Geez, that's not a good start.
No, it's not. And it's there may be a couple of others missing by the time we get to game day, unfortunately. But
all right,
anyway,
get them out of the way. We're at round one.
Yep.
Saturday night footy from Four Pines, Brookie, Manly versus North Queensland. Taniela Paseka had a shoulder. Jason Saab had an ankle. They've both been named to play. Turbo's at fullback. Great to see him back. Jazz Tavanga is going to start at hooker in place of Lachlan Croker, who overcame his neck problem but has a knee issue now. And Siwa Taukiaho is going to play his first game as a Manly Sea Eagle. And for North Queensland, well, everyone was expecting Jake Clifford to be the halfback, but they've gone with the young gun Tom Duffy.
Yeah.
Gus,
yeah.
You seen a bit of him?
Yeah, I have. I actually spoke to Tom Duffy some years ago.
Right.
Not so far as a recruitment thing, but his manager just asked to have a talk to him and talk about footy. Really intelligent young, I think he was only 16 or 17 at the time, really intelligent young footy nerd, watches all games, been watching his progress through the Queensland Cup. He's a talented kid. He's a good game manager, and of course Tommy did, and now is representative class. This is a really good game, isn't it?
Really good.
I'm going to go with the home side simply because it's down here in Sydney. John Bateman's an interesting signing for North Queensland. Look, neither result would surprise me, but I'm just going to go with the fact that I'm going to go with Manly at home to beat them.
I saw Jason Taumalolo in 22 and nearly fainted. I thought, don't tell me they've dropped Jason Taumalolo, but he's coming back from a Liz Frank injury.
Yes. Nasty.
So not sure whether he'll make it. And Sunday footy from Amy Park in Melbourne. Did you know that Craig Bellamy's never lost a round one game, Gus?
Yes.
I think he's
got the same. It's got to happen
23 in a row. Well, I don't know if it'll be this week because Moses is missing for Para. So Hughes, Coates, Pappenhausen were all in doubt for round one, but they're all sweet. Stefano's going to make his club debut starting at prop. Ronald Volkman didn't play at all last year. He's starting in the halves alongside Dylan Brown, but they'll have Addo Carr and Zach. Actually, sorry, no, Addo Carr's not playing, is he? Zach Lomax is going to debut in the centres for Parramatta. Very imposing task going down to play Melbourne first up at home.
Certainly is. Jason Rolls, the new coach of Parramatta, will certainly know everything about Melbourne.
Very true.
Whether that's helpful or intimidating, I don't know. Hard to see Melbourne being beaten at home first up, particularly with all those good players back. Very interested in the development of Stefano Atukamanu, the young Tiger who took the option to get out of his contract and moved down to the Melbourne Storm, looking for development in his career. He's still only young, got everything in front of him. To have a player with the quality of Tyron Wishart on your bench is something special. And no doubt as the season goes on, Melbourne Storm will unearth yet again some young players that we haven't heard of as the season goes on. But to have Xavier Coates back and Will Warbrick and Ryan Pappenhausen and Cameron Munster, Jerome Hughes is going to play. Now, some weeks ago they said all these fellas were in doubt for round one. Parramatta is a work in progress. New coach, some new combinations, new fullback, new halves pairing. Yeah, they've got some, I think, just on the score of familiarity and at home and the Bellamy factor, we'll go with Melbourne Storm to win that one. So we got the two games in Vegas right, and then it's Bronco, Knight, Dolphin, Sea Eagle, Storm.
Very good. We've gone long, but gee, it's been fun. Welcome back.
It's a funny game, Rugby League.
It is a funny game. Hopefully I'll see you next week. Six Tackles is brought to you by Tab. We're on.